everybody, and welcome to another board gaming video. Today's is actually very interesting and very unique because it's going to be about something that I never really talk about, and that is board game aesthetics. I've only mentioned aesthetics very briefly in a couple of videos, just mentioning very specific games that I thought were absolutely gorgeous. Today I'm going to be talking about something very specific to several games, and that is about miniatures. Miniatures have become more and more important in games throughout the years, and they range anywhere from tiny cardboard cutouts all the way up to fully painted plastic miniatures that clearly had a great deal of sculpture work going into them. It's absolutely an enormous gambit, and the thing is that I really like to see some very good quality miniatures. Again, it's not really something I think about very often, but after I see something that's really high quality, then it's something that I always want to play with. And what I'm really looking for these games specifically are miniatures where if I look at a miniature on a board, I know who it is. That's really all it is, because a lot of times these are PCs, these are player character miniatures. So I want to be able to tell who it is at a relative distance, you know, just being able to see across the table who it is. And this can range anywhere from a unique color or any unique paint job really to a specific size, a specific pose, whatever it happens to be. The thing is, when you get down to like just basic cardboard cutouts, those are okay, but at the same time, this does allow for a little bit more immersion. So this is, like I said, a very unique video for me personally, especially because I am generally not somebody who looks at aesthetics, much less miniature specifically. But for these purposes, I'm actually going to mention one thing that's rather interesting, and that is that the vast majority of the games on this list are actually from Kickstarter. Kickstarter has had some absolutely amazing games coming out in the last couple of months and years, and a lot of them actually have very good quality miniatures. I'm not going to go over very many, obviously. It's only going to be my personal favorite 5, but as always, feel free to share your thoughts and feelings on this. But with that, I'm going to go ahead and get started with my number 5. Number 5 is a game that I have talked about in numerous different contexts across pretty much all of the years that I have been making these videos. The game itself is Mage Knight. This is now, and pretty much always has been, my favorite game to play solo. This is actually one of the games that first introduced me to games that you can play, board games that is, that you can play solo. And the thing is that I never thought about it until I played with other games that are relatively similar, but the miniatures in this game are absolutely incredible. And incidentally, this is pretty much the only game on this list that is not in some way from Kickstarter, whether they have something going on right now or did previously, whatever it is. Either way, the miniatures in this game are absolutely amazing, whether it's for the player characters or for the cities that you face off at the end of the game. They are fully painted, so you can tell at just a brief glance who's who, and not only that, but you have very unique characters as well, just in the context of what they look like, much less the colors that they are. The reason that this is a little bit lower on the list, or at the very bottom rather, is because there are a lot of other components to this game that I believe could have been done with miniatures as well. It's not a complete deal breaker, obviously. I mean, it is still in the top 5, but at the same time, you've got additional monsters, you've got caves or caverns or whatever it is that you can explore, tombs, ruins, all sorts of stuff. And I believe that at least some of those things could have been done with miniatures as well. Even if you do it with just the places you're going to and not necessarily the monsters that you're facing, it really could have helped a little bit more with the immersion. Although, again, it's really not that big of a deal, all things considered. There's a lot of other games that do it in a much lower context, or whatever you want to call it. But either way, great game, lots of fun, but wonderful miniatures. Mage Knight, my number 5. At number 4, I've I've got a game that has been on Kickstarter multiple times for different iterations and also for different expansions. It is Zombicide. Zombicide is a really, really fun game where, you guessed it, you get to go out and shoot zombies. But remember, we're not here to talk about games themselves, we're here to talk about the miniatures. I mentioned with number 5, Mage Knight, that one of the issues I have is that the bad guys don't really have miniatures. With Zombicide, everything is miniature. You've got player character miniatures, and you've also got zombie miniatures. And on top of that, the player characters all have very unique looks to them, where, same thing with the zombies. The zombies all have very unique looks in the context of what their capabilities are, so you know what you're dealing with before you can, well, not before you can see them, you always have to be able to see them, but still, being able to see them on the board, and then you can know what you're going to be up against. It's a big help, and it really, really assists with the immersion factor, because just looking at a cardboard token or something like that doesn't really do it for me. But in the context of this game and being able to go and shoot a bunch of zombies or slice them up or whatever it happens to be, very, very fun. Now, why is this a little bit lower on the list? The reason for that is because nothing is painted, nor do you really have the option to paint it unless you do everything yourself. That's going to be a sort of a running theme throughout this whole thing, but at the same time, the miniatures here are similar enough that they can be confused. It's not easy to do. It's definitely not easy to confuse these miniatures, don't get me wrong. But the thing is that they are all gray. Now, to my knowledge, I don't know if there was an option on Kickstarter to get fully painted ones. If you could have, that would have been absolutely amazing, and it would have helped a great deal. But one of the things I personally like to see is to have miniatures that are relatively distinct from one another. So between this and Mage Knight, relatively close, 4 and 5, simply in the context of, with this one, you're looking at a sea of gray that you can still distinguish between one another, but with Mage Knight, you've got very gorgeous color player character miniatures, and then just cardboard token enemy miniatures. So very, very close, but a little bit lower for similar reasons, but either way, absolutely great miniatures, very good sculpting in all of them, including the zombies and everything else. Zombicide, my number 4. At number 3, there is a game that I currently do not have, and I honestly don't know if I'm ever going to get it, but the main reason for this one is simply because of the cost. Now, to represent it, I actually have this right here. I have my big giant Cthulhu die from Steve Jackson Games, but the game that I am thinking of is Cthulhu Wars. Cthulhu Wars is a massive game that came to us from Kickstarter, and it actually cost right around, I think it's $200 or something like that. Incidentally, the same company is now making the board game version of Orcs Must Die, which is a great computer game, and I can't wait for the board game to come out. But Cthulhu Wars has some of the best sculpting I have ever seen in any game. The detail on some of these miniatures is absolutely incredible. And on top of that, a lot of them are large enough that you can really make out minor details at a relatively far away glance. That's a problem with a lot of games that utilize miniatures. You can see miniatures and you know miniatures and it's like, oh, that's cool, yay, miniature. But the problem is they are literal miniatures and you really can't see any detail whatsoever, or if you can, it's so minor that it really makes no difference. But with Cthulhu Wars, you have some incredible detail on some relatively large scale pieces. So it makes for a much, much better gaming experience. I myself have only played the game once, so I am very, very unfamiliar with it, but I do remember that the miniatures themselves are absolutely gorgeous. Like I said, I'm probably, unfortunately, never really going to own it myself, simply because it's so absurdly expensive, but a large part of that is to pay for all the sculpting for all the miniatures to make them so beautiful. So it's a kind of a double-edged sword here, but either way, it's a great game. It's a lot of fun. Miniatures are absolutely gorgeous. Cthulhu Wars, my number 3. number 2, I've got the game that really started me thinking about making this video. I thought to myself, these miniatures are absolutely gorgeous. This game itself has a beautiful aesthetic. I have to try to talk about this a little bit more. The game is 12 Realms. Now, 12 Realms is a really, really interesting game where the point is that you are going into like fairy tale worlds and you're trying to drive away the dark forces. It's really, to an extent, very stereotypical, but at the same time, it feels like a very, very well-designed game. It's very well done, it's a lot of fun to play, and the miniatures, again, are absolutely incredible. This is another one that comes to us from Kickstarter, and they're actually getting ready to start up another Kickstarter as well. But for our purposes here, one of the best options you can have with this game is not only can you get a bunch more miniatures that correspond to a bunch of the different bad guys, but you can also get everything painted, and they look amazing. Unfortunately for me, I did not get the ones that are painted, but they look absolutely gorgeous. You remember I mentioned with Mage Knight, that's one of the things I like the most. The thing is that the ones with Mage Knight, you can see, yes, they are clearly painted, they look very good, but the miniatures on this with 12 Realms, if you get that package, they are hand painted by the people who actually make the game. Well, not the people who made it, but you know, people they hire, but they are hand painted by an actual person, and they absolutely look incredible. Absolutely gorgeous paint job, absolutely gorgeous miniatures in general. I have the ones that aren't painted, and I frankly don't feel like I need the ones that are painted because I can tell fairly easily what character is what. They all have very, very distinct poses. They also are scaled very well with regard to their size relative to one another, relative to the different characters. So it's absolutely a great immersive experience, and especially for a game like this, when you're talking about going through fairy tales and things like that, having that immersive storytelling aspect is absolutely vital, and the miniatures actually do a fairly decent job of pulling you through that. So because of all that, 12 Realms is my number 2. At number 1 is the other game on this list that I don't own, but it is absolutely the Big Daddy OG of miniature games all throughout the land, 40K. That's right, Warhammer 40K, and in this case thinking specifically about Horus Heresy. Horus Heresy is an enormous game. I mentioned Cthulhu Wars earlier, but Horus Heresy puts it to shame. If any of you have ever played any sort of Warhammer or any other Games Workshop game, whether it's the terrain battle games or a board game based off of them, you know how incredible the miniatures are. And the reason that this is at the top of the list, I know it's kind of weird because it's like, well, there's a whole bunch of miniatures that aren't painted and this and that and the other. The whole point of a lot of Games Workshop games is that they are not painted. And the idea is that if you are a person who plays these Game Workshop's games and you like them and you go through them and you do all this thing, then you paint them. That is half of the fun, or even more of that. More than half of the fun. The whole point is that you want to paint everything the way that you want, and Games Workshop as a company knows that. They know their target audience. These are the types of people that they're selling to. Now for me personally, as a gamer, Horus Heresy is a good game. I like it. It's a massive battle strategic game, and realistically you could put virtually any really true war game in this position. Any time where you have very distinctive, really good miniatures that involve, you know, like a side A versus side B, then you could pretty much put that into this category very easily and potentially at the number 1. But Warhammer 40K, the original, the OG, the entire point is that they worked off of these gorgeous miniatures ranging anywhere from tiny infantry divisions all the way up to the massive artillery tanks and these massive mech robots and all sorts of crazy stuff. If you see some of the people who paint these and like actually are really into these, they look incredible and way, way, way far superior, far and away superior to anything that any mass manufacturing could get you. But obviously these require a great deal of dedication to actually making the miniatures look that great. But even so, out of the box, the miniatures themselves don't really look that bad. Sometimes with a lot of the Warhammer 40k stuff, you have to assemble them and things like that, and if you paint them, obviously you paint as you assemble and all that good thing. But at the same time, just having them unpainted, the sculpt work on these miniatures is also completely and utterly gorgeous. There's really nothing that you can say against these things other than the fact that, you know, these are for the very hardcore people who want to play miniature games. And that is why, by and far and away, however you want to say it, Warhammer 40k and specifically Horus Heresy is my #1 miniatures board game. So that's it for me, everybody. I hope you enjoyed my top 5 board games that have really nice miniatures that give a very good aesthetic feel to everything and that really do help with the immersion within the game. Now, as I mentioned with my #1, Horus Heresy or any of the Warhammer 40Ks, this is something that can be massively expanded across numerous different genres as well as obviously numerous different games. So for example, various types of war games, the 1 versus 1 or 2 versus 2, whatever it is. So for example, one of my favorites is Mythic Battles. You've also got Star Wars, the X-Wing miniatures, as well as Armada, which just came out not too long ago. You've also got, I've got Panzer General over there. Nexus Ops is pretty decent. I mean, and then obviously you've got like Eclipse and Twilight Imperium and all those, which have just like the little plastic miniatures. Now, what about you guys? What do you prefer? Do you prefer to have the weak little plastic miniatures? Do you like to have the fancier ones? Do you prefer just having the little cardboard tokens? Or do you really not care at all? What is your opinion on all of this? I would love to hear it. You guys know that I always do. I look forward very much to seeing what you guys have to say, and as always, what games you like to see with this category. Are there specific games that you like with miniatures? What do you like about them? All of that kind of stuff, anything and everything. I love the discussion, always enjoyable. But with that, thank you so much again for watching this video. I hope you liked it, and I will see you next time. Thank you very much again for watching my video for my top 5 board gaming miniatures. If you have a personal favorite for this category, please feel free to put it in the comments below. In addition, if you totally agree, totally disagree, whatever it happens to be with me, then feel free to put that in there as well. In addition, I've got several of my videos linked up at the top of the page so that you can check out some of my other work. And if you want to see more of me in the future, click on that big giant subscribe button. And be sure to follow me on Twitter at DannyCGamingSci. But with that, thank you once again, and I will see you next time.